Good afternoon. I'm glad we salvaged you from TEDx. You might be soaring up with all the excitement and enthusiasm over a variety of different things. But did you know that in healthcare, less than 60% of the providers wash their hands on a daily basis? I was a little surprised about that. I'll think about it next time I'm scrubbing. But call to order. Roll call, please.
Dr. Mahoney?
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn?
Here.
Mr. Grinberg?
Here.
Mr. Vanyo?
Here.
Mrs. Scherling? Here. Mr. Peterson?
Here.
Mr. Campbell?
Here.
Mr. Wayland?
Here.
Ms. Williams?
Here.
Mr. Hendrickson? Mr. Paulson? Mr. Thorsted? Mr. Brodshaug?
Here.
Very good. Some people might join us a little later. Dora, you think? Or?
I have no idea. It's hard to find parking, so maybe that's it.
Oh, yes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meetings?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Is there a motion to approve the order of agenda?
So moved. Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Number item 4, PMC report.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Randy Richardson with the PMC. Just a quick review of the major achievements of the last few weeks here. The board just previously approved both the Oxbow levy and County Route 16 and 17 contracts. We've already held pre-construction meetings for both of those contracts and are looking forward to proceeding with construction very quickly on that. The P3 team was working very diligently to get out the next release of the RFP tomorrow. Mayor Mahoney, I believe you were in Bismarck this last week at the Water Topics Committee meeting. I don't know if you wanted to comment on that.
We had a good report with the Water Topics Committee. They're still very enthusiastic about the diversion, and we're curious as well as the lawsuit, what's happening there, and also concerned about if we don't get it built and the flood comes, what are we going to do about the intake? So it was kind of interesting. People are kind of getting interested in that. The other thing on acquisitions, they were pleased that we have made as many acquisitions so far in the project that we have. So it was a good meeting overall. They didn't have any burning concerns at this time.
Thank you. As the mayor mentioned, phase 1 and phase 2 land acquisitions continue, and they're continuing at a pretty good clip. We anticipate that those will accelerate depending on what Judge Tunheim has to say in the next month or so. Several of us in the room attended the federal hearing early last week, and I'll comment on that a little bit later in my briefing. The judge said he would rule within 30 days, and so hopefully we'll have some direction from him. And also we had the executive director candidates were in Fargo earlier this week, visiting here, the program office, and then took a project tour. For the next month, one of the priorities that you've seen up here repeatedly is to send the Clomer notification letters out to individual property owners. Now we're waiting for FEMA to approve the Clomer, and we've got a little bit of a snag with Minnesota DNR as they are part of that process also. So we're working with FEMA to get that Clomer approved. As I mentioned, the RFP draft will go out, and that will generate a series of questions from stakeholders and from the proponents themselves. So the P3 team will be working on answering those comments. Part of the land acquisition activities that we'll be moving on to is to do a flowage easement valuation study. Now, the Cass County Joint Water Resources Board, I believe yesterday, Mark, approved an RFP for that process. So we're looking for a consultant to come in and help us think through how we value flowage easements. It's very important that we do this in a methodical and quantitative way. Rocky and his team are working on a crisis communication plan, policies and protocols as we begin to approach construction. It's very important that we have in place a set way of how we will respond if there is some emergency that we need to respond to. And as I mentioned, Judge Tunheim is going to issue a ruling, we believe, in the next month or so, and we'll have to assess the impact, if there's any impact, on what that ruling means. John, I didn't know if you wanted to summarize your sense of the hearing? No? Okay. Okay. Any questions for me then?
Good.
Kevin, I believe you were going to say something about the hearing.
Well, yeah, I have a comment to make regarding the hearing. Commissioner Whalen from Clay County and I and Mayor Williams from the Minnesota side were,
And Chuck?
and Chuck was also there that day, and I think some of the actions and comments and discussions that transpired before the judge, I think, need to be discussed, and what really became concern to us was the Minnesota DNR's position that a viable option to the current plan is the original NED plan or the Minnesota Diversion plan. And they kept on referring in their arguments that, and I say this while at the same time they were talking about whether the current plan is permittable or not. And you know, it was almost like by saying the Minnesota plan is a viable option, that one is permittable. I find how they can find one permittable and not the other one. So it really concerns there, and the other component of that, and I briefed our county board on this yesterday, and I don't think there would be one vote of support for that to happen on the Clay County side. The Department of the DNR also kept referring to the health and safety of our citizens and the environment in Minnesota, that's who they're to protect. And I want to say that by stopping this project right now would put a significant amount of my citizens in Clay County in jeopardy with health and safety. And it would also put our county into a drastical situation regarding the environment. And I say that because our county seat, being the city of Moorhead, is, and some of the rural areas are dependent on the Buffalo Aquifer. And that Minnesota diversion would have to go almost directly over that Buffalo Aquifer. That is not an option. So I want to thank the Corps and the Department of Justice for the way they argued our case. I think they did a fantastic job, and I want to thank the Diversion Authority attorneys for the way they presented it. But I certainly hope that, I want the Minnesota DNR to understand that there is a lot more at stake here, and the Minnesota alignment is not a viable option. And I can say that from county board stance, that we would not allow that to happen. So.
Very good. Any other comments with your board?
I was
Mayor
just gonna
Williams?
say, I would echo what the commissioner has said. I like him speaking about it in particular because he was here when the Minnesota option was first discussed and has that history and remembers the fanfare that it got locally. I texted later on Chad Olson, the mayor of Dilworth, because I knew that would be a key thing he would want to know. But it was really interesting. I do put a little bit of perspective in that it's attorneys making their case in the same way that Commissioner Landwehr, I think, got excited about our attorneys making their case. I recognize that our attorneys make their case too in ways that may or may not be something we're actually talking about. So I put that in perspective a little bit, but it was a little disheartening to sort of hear the conversation about citizens when my city is the town with the most citizens that are affected in this way.
Very good. Thanks for your support. Are you ready?
Yes. Good afternoon. Robert Cowen with PMC. Go over the overall program status financial through the end of June. Actual cost to date, $370 million. That includes all expenditures as well as invoices that are in process. Shows you the categories and remaining budgets for each item. No questions I'll go through. For the 2017 cash budget, What we have here to date is roughly 36 million expended out of a budget of 241 million. Everything is on track, and as we spoke at Finance Committee, we'll look at land expenditures remaining of the year, see what we anticipate. So we'll report back on that next month.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question? You have fiscal year 2017. It's not calendar year?
Question of whether it's fiscal year or calendar year.
Or
The fiscal year is calendar
year?
year. That was
Okay.
changed, I believe, in 2015 for the Diversion Authority.
And what's the year end?
Year end is December 31st, so it's the
Okay.
calendar year.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Good afternoon, Greg Baisch with the PMC. Going to give you a quick little construction update. In-town levies, 42A1. Basically, all the work is complete, and we're working towards project closeout sometime here in August. A2, F1N, and F1S. You can see we're just kind of fine-tuning stuff. F1S, of course, is the one that's going to drag on a little bit just because of the generator work that can't happen until we can actually get in there to install the generator in October. Once again, on the in-town levies, working the punch list items, and we anticipate closing this one out in August as well. So 42G is the landscaping. So we've spoke about this one prior. This is the exact same slide I showed you last time, so there hasn't been any changes because the contractors probably will not start work until sometime in the beginning of September. And of course, 43E. So what you see there is our projects where we'll close out 2D in September. So all of that's pretty much will complete now. We're just working through all the closeout of it. 2E, all the anticipated work that's going to fall underneath the footprint of the levee, that will be completed by August 11th, and we're definitely on track for that. Schmidt & Sons is doing, they're out there chugging right along on that. 43E2F. So what we're having is a little bit of challenge with our contractor on that one, specifically on the houses 817 and 821. Those sit underneath the footprint of the levee. There's 5 houses that have to be removed. Those two, 817, we actually didn't get closure on that house until last week. So we weren't even able to access that property until last week. So the contractor's going to be somewhat delayed on getting 817 out. And the reason why that affects 821 is because it was right next door. And in order for them, it's stuck between 2 houses, and he couldn't really get access to 821. We've had some rather in-depth conversations with the contractor to get them on track, because the big thing, of course, in the contract, it does say demo, it doesn't say necessarily move. And so we're trying to work with them to at least try to meet the initial completion date for those houses that are underneath the levee. But however, 817, he's probably due something because he got a late start and wasn't able to get there because we have delayed him because we didn't get access to the house ourselves. Once again, I showed this last week, so this is just to give you what the levee project is. So as far as the levee project is, tomorrow is actually the pre-construction conference for 43. We've already held a pre-con with Myers Construction, and you signed the contract yesterday. Thank you very much, sir. So we've got the contract signed. We do anticipate a notice to proceed at least by August 14th. We'll do the pre-construction tomorrow. It should go pretty quick because we've already got them moving forward because we did a pre-con with them to get them set up and all the systems. And then on August 1st, we will do a partnering with them. So this is one of the few projects where we've actually called out for partnering in the specification. We will bring the main stakeholders, including the City of Oxbow, in with the contractor, and of course, members from the Diversion Authority, ourselves, Corps of Engineers. Everybody that's going to be involved in certification of that levee will be a part of the partnering meeting. We'll have representation anyway on the 1st. And I am bringing in a facilitator from our company that's outside of the project, so that way he's kind of a little bit more neutral than somebody that's directly involved with the project. And then once again, like I said, we anticipate notice to proceed on August 14th. The enabling works, of course, this work package 28 alpha, I'll get the word out there. So I just walked away from the pre-construction conference today. We just barely completed that today. That went rather well. We're looking at an anticipated notice to proceed probably sometime next week, but August 14th at the latest. There's still a few submittals that they've got to work through this. So we still have not got still have not approved their safety plan or their quality control plan, but the rest of their submittals are all in. We received those documents this morning, so it's just a matter of getting those reviewed, getting them up to snuff, and then holding a quick QC meeting and a safety meeting, and then getting them started. But we do anticipate the notice to proceed to be no later than the 14th, but probably more towards next week rather than the 14th. Just all depends on how well we can get their plans approved. Subject to that, do you have any questions?
Question, Mark?
I would encourage you to hold the contractor's feet to the fire on that Riverbend demo
Yes.
project. Tell me if I'm wrong, but I think the closing date on that house was known when the contractor was awarded. It wasn't?
It wasn't. That's one of the little problems. It was not known because we went back and looked at the contract and it was not known. So he does have a little bit of leeway there. So I mean, if you kind of argued that, he could argue, hey, you know what, I am due some delay for this particular house. So we do intend to get something negotiable with him that meets everybody, but I don't think he's got any leeway on 821.
Okay.
I think he can definitely have that one out. And we spoke with him yesterday. Basically what I did in the meeting with him yesterday is I discussed 3 options. So those 3 options would be demo it, right? And you should be able to meet it. The other one would be move it outside the footprint at a location we can agree upon. Or the final option, of course, is get somebody bought today and then move it before then, right? So he's basically got 3 options to deal with. My preference would be the first 2, demo it or get it moved off the footprint right now, and he shouldn't have any impact whatsoever. As far as impact to the following projects, one of the things that we've really got to be able to do is see Meyer Construction's preliminary schedule, because how will this delay affect Myers, which then will delay the golf course? So what we're trying to really look at is also evaluating, does it really going to do that because of the Champs House? So the Champs House, so 821 set in between the Champs House and 817. That's why we couldn't get 821 out. However, now we'll have the Champs House, which is under the Work Package 43 contract. So that one actually will be the driving factor on if 817 actually delays the contractor. Because if he gets in there and moves Champs House immediately, so there's a little hinge in there. So there's some things we really have to look at and evaluate. But I would agree with you. Hold him to the fire as much as we possibly can. But I do think, he probably does have a little bit of recourse there.
Yep. We have a domino effect there. If we get some slippage on this first one, it's going to mess
Exactly.
up everything that follows on.
Exactly, and that's why I also need to see Myers' schedule on when they intend on moving the Champs House. Any other questions? Thank you, sir.
We have a surprise visitor today. The Lieutenant Governor, Brent Sanford, is here in town today for the TEDx. He's learning how to make government more efficient, I think, or something like that. But we met at lunch, and I said, why don't you just stop by to the board and maybe make some comments. He's been very helpful to us in the legislative body for the money that we received, the $66.5 million, and has kept feet to the fire people out there to make sure we get the things we need. So I open it up if you'd like to make a little speech, and we'll excuse you to go back to TEDx, but I just thought it'd be nice for you to stop by. It works if you just speak to it.
It works? All right. Thank you, Mayor. Pleasure to be here. It's nice to be able to see government in action like this, but I can tell you this is a very important project for this community, obviously, but it's also something that the Governor and I are paying close attention because of the effect on the folks in Wapaton and south of here as well. It obviously, county commissioners, I'm sure you know, I mean, it's something that's not easy when there's people affected on both sides of an issue like this. So the collaboration, communication is important. It's something that we hope to keep having that conversation with the folks from Richland County, from Wapaton, as things go on as well. But everyone knows what happened to Grand Forks in 1997. I lived in Fargo at that time. It was devastating. We can't have anything like that happen to this community. We all know it. The way of having this happen has been under obviously some concern from folks of different sides of the equation. From our perspective, it looks like we've done what we can from your side of the issue. We've talked to the Corps of Engineers. When the Corps of Engineers is basically full systems ahead, that means a lot. That takes a lot. That's an organization that's very careful in their planning. They know what their mission is. They know the results they want to achieve. From the governor's office, just to close, you know, you can call on us for diplomacy efforts if it's the state of Minnesota, if it's the Corps of Engineers, if it's within the different communities in the Red River area, if it's Grand Forks, Wapaton, everywhere in between. So full speed ahead. Congratulations on the progress you've made, and look forward to seeing completion of the project. The funding is something I can speak to personally. It's a monumental effort to come up with the funding for something like this as well. And the balance sheet of the state is strong. The earnings stream wasn't as good last session, so hopefully that's better in the next year and a half. I can tell you from speaking from the west, it does look better, contrary to what you might hear. The oil industry is doing better. The energy industry as a whole is in better shape than it was. Now, the drought is a challenge. We don't know what the result of that will be on state budgets, but overall the economy looks like it's heading a good direction, so maybe we'll have decent results next time.
We
Obviously,
had kind
the-
of heard at times that Fargo kind of helps carry the load
Yep.
for the state at times, but now Watford City's going to carry the load?
They have been. Sales tax wise, no, sales tax is obviously Fargo carries a big load, but that resource trust fund, there are funds available, and so it's a matter of prioritization. As all of you know, the Water Commission will have 7 new members, and so it'll be interesting to see, you know, how the projects work through the new Water Commission. But the governor's excited for his role on that board, and so look to be able to continue the dialogue moving forward. Thank you for the time. Thanks for inviting me.
Tony Grinberg.
Just a comment, it was great to see 53 applicants for the State Water Commission.
Yes.
Best of luck choosing the new Water Commission.
Thanks.
Were you the final guy that gets to make the final 7, or?
I wish. No, I'm not.
Thank you very much, and we will take you up in communication sometimes with different people if we need to, so appreciate that. Are we at item 5? The Braun Intertech and Astor Services Agreement?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, members of the Diversion Authority Board. Before you have the master agreement for professional services between the Diversion Authority and Braun Intertech. This is a master services agreement for them to provide geotechnical analysis on a project-by-project basis. This scope, so the MSA provides that the Diversion Authority will assign them specific work packages, so it's not an all-encompassing task, it's just specifics, and the task order that's currently attached to the MSA is related to the Oxbow Hickson-Baki work packages and the County Road 1617 realignment for geotechnical services. The Diversion Authority can assign additional work in the future pursuant to the terms and conditions in the Master Services Agreement, so it kind of sets the general bookends, and if we need their work or assistance on different projects, we can do it on a case-by-case basis. I think if you have questions relating to the technical aspects of the services, I think somebody from CH2M can answer those, but I can certainly answer any questions regarding the MSA.
Any questions by the team? Could I have a motion?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn? Mr. Grinberg?
Aye.
Mr. Vaniel?
Yes.
Mrs. Scherling? Yes. Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted?
Yes.
Mr. Brodshaug?
Yes.
Public Outreach Committee report.
Good afternoon, Rocky Schneider with the E2S. Wanted to touch on something that Randy touched on a little earlier, the Clomar application with FEMA. Just while the Lieutenant Governor is here as well, this is something we're really relying on, as we have a lot of efforts based around this. This is a document we've submitted to FEMA where they're going to sort of sign off on our model and conditionally approve what the model says it does, so for both impacts and benefits. And we have a whole host of efforts we're working on that would follow that approval. We plan to make phone calls and individual maps out to every impacted property, and then follow that up with the land acquisition process and the timeline. And I know that's something that your office has expressed, so as the Senator's office is, you know, when are you going to go out and talk to people, when they're going to see their impacts, their maps, and they've sort of changed over the years, and this is a snapshot in time when FEMA says, okay, here's what the impacts are, And so we're waiting on that, and I know the Corps worked very hard on it, and our senators are involved. And so we expect that any day, but there's a whole host of efforts that everyone's been waiting for some time for that to happen. And so we're really hoping that happens soon. Additionally, we're working with the 5 Minnesota board members to set up some legislative meetings, and we expect that to happen in the next couple of weeks. I think there was an effective meeting out to St. Paul, and we sort of hope to keep that momentum going. The outreach committee met yesterday, and I think wanted to pass along their discussion there yesterday. I think there's a growing sense, I think not just from them, but from a lot of you, the need to respond to articles in the paper, letters to the editor, on the radio. I know Kevin Campbell and Mayor Williams were both on the radio after the litigation hearing, and all of that is helpful, and I think the outreach committee wants to do more of that, and so I guess thank everybody who has done that. And one of the people who is doing that, if you can bear with me for a minute, we're going to show a quick video. This is our 3 questions series, and this is with the famous Chad Peterson.
When is the bison herd going to be done? Oh, sorry, wrong question.
Mayor. The site we're shooting at is Oak Grove, and as I mentioned prior, is that my home is just right down the street. So what I was specifically doing was, during the day we were sandbagging at Mickelson Park, at other neighbors that called the line for help, and at the night I was actually building pallets to raise things off the floor of my garage. Well, just north of downtown, you'd think you'd be insulated from things. We're not next to the river. We're a quarter mile or more away. And here we sit with me raising things up in the garage, with taking things out of the basement. It's hard to process that. You think you're safe when you're in town because you're not next to the river. You think you're safe because geographically, boy, I'm so far away. It's not the case. We have roughly 30,000 people a day that come here to work. And it's not just from rural Cass. It's not just from Trail County. It's not just from Steele County. They come from Becker County. They come all through Minnesota. Those are the people I care just as much about, because we in North Dakota make up roughly 20% of the overall economy. And we've seen what happened out west with the slowdown in oil. Well, what would happen if 20% of the state's economy completely collapsed for up to 10 years? I've learned places like Grand Forks took up until, I think, 2 or 3 years ago to get back to the baseline elementary school enrollment they were in prior to the flood they had. It's the bigger picture items. It's making sure people in Detroit Lake still have a job tomorrow. It's stability of knowing where your medical care is going to be. They come here in cases for school, be it tech school, be it college. That's the stabilizing force the diversion brings. I struggle with having my daughter having to sandbag, take days off from school and go throw sandbags again, like we did when we were little, like our parents did, like our brothers and sisters did. That can't happen anymore. We're a growing community. We're not showing any signs of going back, shrinking, we're booming. Why let something like a flood, which we can in this case control if we so choose, dictate to us what the city, what the region is going to be? That's why I do this.
You know, and then just one stat to follow up on this is we've seen a growing increase in duration of people staying on the website and visiting, things like our YouTube channel and everything else. And we think this is part of the reason is these videos are easy to consume, they're well done, great acting, and so we're going to continue this. Commissioner Grinberg is the next one.
He looked like himself, Rocky. I don't think that was acting.
Lined up to go. Commissioner Campbell's on deck. And so we expect to keep doing these. We've also worked with public access, and we'll be running these in sort of a joint compilation on public access as well. Try to get those messages out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Land management, Mary Scherling, are you reporting that, land management?
Yes, thank you. Land management met yesterday. We reviewed the flowage easement valuation RFQ. I had some recommendations to add some more criteria and move that forward onto the Joint Water Resource District, which I understand moved on it yesterday. We also had a conversation regarding use and access of project-owned lands, some cultural mitigation issues, and crop insurance, just a variety of topics. And I think the consensus of all of that is that we want to make sure that we're moving on these issues sooner rather than later, so that we can try to address everyone's concerns you know, before they get to be a hot topic. So that's what we're working on there. As far as the property acquisition goes, Randy touched on that a little bit. You have item 7B in your packet. I don't see Eric here, but maybe Dean or somebody, I don't know. Did you want to address item 7B?
And Mary, when you've done eminent domain, I noticed it wasn't too many of them. It's like 4% at best, isn't it?
You know, I think as we continue, and it's my goal that the longer we have to negotiate these properties, the more likely that we are all to come to an agreement. The problem becomes when we have to do something because we're pressed for time. So as long as we can coordinate with the Corps of Engineers and, again, get ahead of that game, I think it's going to be a win-win for everyone.
And Mark Bradshaw, when you do a quick take, that takes 280 days, is that correct?
Under the new process, that's what our estimate is, to follow the letter of the law and the new process from beginning to end. So we're approaching negotiation to allow at least that much time, because that's what it requires.
The legislature brought the Cass County or county commissions into that procedure, and so it just all takes time. Schedule your meetings and get everybody up to speed. So, you know, that certainly is not the desired way to do things. We would much rather have everyone come to an agreement, and that's what our goal is.
Thank you.
Dean Vetter with the AE2S. There are currently 6 parcels in the eminent domain. That would be on the second slide, or the second page of the handout. The very bottom, it's kind of small print down there. But I guess I would let you all know that despite the fact that we do have 6 parcels in eminent domain, we are continuing to work with at least a couple of these landowners and actually have been making some progress. So, but I guess what I would also point out on this particular slide is that as you look at the Georgetown or the Phase 1 areas on the top, you're seeing a lot more green and quite a bit of purple that's showing up, which means we have purchase agreements signed. So those will be, by next month, hopefully flowed into a green tile, which means we have acquired it. So.
Very good, thank you. Any questions? So that's your report as well, and that land acquisition report? We don't have to vote, just accept the report?
Nope, that's fine.
Okay. Finance, Tony Grinberg.
Just following up on Mr. Cowen's comments on item 8A, overview of our financial condition. As noted earlier, just under $36 million for 2017 has been expended, with a total of just under $370 million total for the project. Things are in lining with the budget for 2017, as well as the second page on 8A is our net position on cash is just under a little over $77 million. Finance Committee recommended, acknowledge this yesterday. It's pretty straightforward, unless Mr. Costin has anything to add. Item 8B, ask Mr. Shockley to walk us through the approval we'll need to do here this afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Mr. Finance Chair, members of the Diversion Authority Committee, or the Diversion Board of Authority. Before you have a resolution authorizing the fiscal agent for the Diversion Authority to draw down the 2017 Wells Fargo loans. As you may recall, at the last Diversion Authority meeting, the board authorized both Cass County and City of Fargo to enter into new loan agreements with Wells Fargo to refund prior obligations that have been taken out with Wells Fargo by both the county and the city. The net total amount of the prior loans were $200 million. The net total amount of these 2 loans is $200 million. So there's no increase in the amount of debt that's being taken on. It's only being refinanced. All the documents are essentially done. We're closing on Monday. We have to authorize the fiscal agent to authorize Wells Fargo to draw down the new loans to repay the old loans. And there won't actually be any money exchanging any hands. It's all happening internally at Wells Fargo. It's going from one loan ledger to another loan ledger, but nonetheless, we need official authorization that it's okay for Kent and his authority to make that authorization. I can answer any questions regarding the transactions, but they've both been approved by Cass County and Fargo, and we're set to close on Monday. So we
A motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion or questions? Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn. Mr. Grinberg.
Aye.
Mr. Vano,
Yes.
Mr. Scherling,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Wayland,
Yes.
Ms. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Paulson,
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted. Mr. Brodshaug.
Yes.
Vote to approval, item 8C.
8C is in front of you. You'll see a request for bills to pay to Cass County Joint Water Resource District, Dorsey and Whitney, Onstead, Twitchell, and Cass County Government for reimbursements on dust control. Yesterday, the notable point of order discussion was the two items on the second page, where you'll see the amounts listed for advertisement or publishing of the assessment hearing notices to Forum Communications for $188,000 and Wapton Daily News for $141,000. Clarification was made that Richland County, there were properties were impacted, had to be posted in the Daily News as well.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn. Mr. Grinberg.
Aye.
Mr. Vano,
Yes.
Mr. Scherling,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mr. Campbell,
Yes.
Mr. Wayland,
Yes.
Ms. Williams,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Paulson,
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted. Mr. Brodshaug.
Yes.
Item 8D, recommended contract.
Chair?
elections.
Manuel has a question.
Chair,
Darrell, go ahead.
I wanted to bring something or raise a question. I apologize to Commissioner Grinberg that I didn't do this yesterday. It escaped me, but under the financial reports, there's a 5-page report called Summary of Expenses. And on page 3 of 5 of the Summary of Expenses, there are dollar amounts for relocation, buyouts. In the middle of that page, one of them is for Mr. Champ. Could someone enlighten me? Have we reached conclusion? Many of you will remember that he was the last property to be bought out in Oxbow, and I'm curious, have we reached a settlement with Mr. Champ?
Who would have that?
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah,
we have
Mark,
reached
that's-
agreement with Mr. Champ. We went through an appeal process that identified a couple minor items that he may have been entitled to for relocation. And after that and further discussion, we did come to an agreement. And we did close on it, I think, a week or two ago. So the Champ House is one of the ones that was identified on Riverbend that is left to be moved, but we have closed on the property, and that is part of that demo package or house moving package.
Well, yes, it's the only house in 43 CD under the levy program. And Mr. Champ's already started moving out. He'll pretty much will be completely out of the house probably by the end of next week. So they've
Okay,
already.
my question is, what is that amount, that $636,000? What is that amount for?
The buyout of a home kind of gets broken into into different parts. The appraised value gets to be one item, and then there's relocation,
Okay.
and then the replacement housing agreement. So the net effect from what the Finance Committee approved, I don't know, probably a year ago, was a slight increase in the Champ property. Most of the increase was just a change through negotiations. Some of the items that he would be entitled to through relocation after we settled on the house got moved forward into the payment for the house. So the actual dollar cost to us maybe was just a couple % more than what the Finance Committee approved a year or two ago. But some of the relocation items got moved forward, is my recollection.
Okay, Mr. Chair, if I could, I would like this information brought through next month's Finance Committee meeting for this reason. Every single home that was subject to a buyout in Oxbow went through the Finance Committee. This one did too, and it got approved for a purchase, and it got approved by the board, but Mr. Champ rejected it and wanted to continue discussions and escalating the process. He did do that, but to my knowledge, or the knowledge of the Finance Board, none of us were ever aware of what you just explained, Mark, and that was that somewhere he determined that he would settle for some amount more. And so I was not, and nor was the Finance Committee, aware of exactly what that was. And for that reason, I realized that it's a done deal now, but at the same time, I think we need to be informed of exactly what happened to that property. So I'm asking that someone, Mark, I know Eric isn't there, but Mark, CH2M, anybody to put the information together so that at least we know as a Finance Committee and possibly even the board exactly what the settlement was. So I hope that you understand my reasoning for asking for this.
Sure. Well, being Eric isn't here, we'll put it on his plate, and Eric can report the next Finance Committee. But want to point out to the Diversion Authority and that there's a negotiation after the negotiation too. On every property acquisition we do, we set a policy, that we're start with appraised value, like on farmland, and we may allow a little bit of a leeway around appraised value, but then there's other things that are not in the headline price number that can add or subtract some cost, whether there's rent back provisions or if somebody's going to stay in a house and rent it back for a while. So, we've taken the position that we will talk policy with the Finance Committee, like on farmland. We've talked about policy. There's been some budget items set on it, but we're not bringing every little decision back to Finance Committee. I recognize this Champ House is a huge, huge acquisition, and it was kind of a real sticking point for us. We've spent hundreds of hours of staff time and legal time on this thing, and that adds cost to things too. So, we try to weigh those things, whether it pays to settle some of these things or to run it out through the legal system and add another $250,000 of, staff time and legal costs and things.
But in a sense, Mark, you're an agent for us. You followed all policies and procedures. And this board really did not want to take up every individual acquisition, or we could oversee every acquisition that's going on by the committee. And so I think this board is elected to have you as our agent. So for information, Darrell, it could be brought back, but it's a done deal. The contract is signed and Finance signed off on it a long time ago.
Yeah, but we'd be happy to bring it back to Finance and go over the details.
I think
and
for
review what
information
happened.
purposes, that would be fine.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm not questioning your decision. Quite frankly, I don't know what the added dollar amount is to even question it. But because everyone knows that there was a fair amount of attention paid to this one, and the fact that for other reasons, which I won't get into, this one had visibility, I'm just asking for the information, not questioning the decision.
Okay. Commissioner Grunberg.
Thank you.
So we're still on 8D. So on 8D, the first three items that you see here were already approved by the co-executive chairs, directors. Basically what this was, there was a new master service agreement signed with Houston Moorhead Group. This is 3 of their tasks. The agreement was signed on May 1st, and this is just updating the new rates that they'll do based on the new terms and conditions. Same goes for this. This is for AEComs, for their master service agreement. And then one that you already see on the bottom there is talking about the Braun Intertech one. Mr. Shockley's already briefed you on that one as well. And then the last one is, was basically a owner's request to do some sidewalk changes on this particular project because it wasn't draining properly. So they went back in there and made some changes to allow for drainage, and that one's just a $7,000 change order. Well, all of these have already been looked at by the Finance Committee and the TAG as well.
Your motion to approve item
Move for
18?
approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney?
Aye.
Mr. Pepcorn? Mr. Grenberg?
Aye.
Mr. Vano?
Yes.
Scherling?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mr. Campbell?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Ms. Williams?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Paulson?
Yes.
Mr. Thorsted? Mr. Brodshaug?
Yes.
Item 11, well, you know the next meeting is August 24th. Item 11, Executive Director Search Process Update. Mike, is that or you or John?
Mr. Chair, members of the Metro Flood Diversion Board of Authority, as you know, it's a very important position, the Executive Director. You've conducted interviews over the last week. The staff is currently recommending some additional time to perform additional background and review of the references for each of the candidates so that we can compile that information and bring it back to the Diversion Authority Board. Specifically, we want to find out the most information possible about their experience, about their role within the organizations, and kind of go back to those second-tier sources within the organization and make sure that you're getting the right fit for the position. We really feel that it's a position that's so important to the authority that it's better to measure twice and cut once and get it right. And so we feel it's prudent to take a little bit of additional time and double check those references and come back to the board with more information.
Discussion with the group? Sound reasonable? Mayor
Sure.
Williams?
Would you call us back for a separate meeting before the 24th, or are you thinking that long?
Yeah, we're, and I defer to Mike, but we're thinking it'll probably take about 10 days to get the reference checks completed. And if we're ready to make a recommendation, you certainly have the option with the conferencing with the chair to call a special meeting.
Sounds good.
Sounds reasonable to the group? Any motions? No? We'll just wait, that'd be fine. I want to thank everybody who took part of the interviews. That was really great. I thought we had great participation and we had great questions. I don't know why I asked about energy, but anyway, it was, the candidates did spend some time here and did get to see everything. I think you all had an opportunity to meet with them, so we'll wait final recommendations on that. Is there any other business? I think Lieutenant Governor, the Governor is going to speak now. Is that correct over at TEDx? Talk about the future of Fargo Moorhead area or something, or is he like Main Street Initiative?
He only has 3 minutes, so I don't think so.
Oh, okay.
He's supposed to tie it all up. We know how 3 minutes goes.
Well, thank you very much for coming by. You're welcome anytime to come by, and whenever we have to face the judge, we'd be happy to have you come by as well, but is there a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Adjourn. Thank you very much.